Right, I'm hitting live.
So I can't talk about plants anymore.
No, you cannot. do, do not.
Fine.
I so thought you was going to say it. Hi, everyone. Hopefully you can hear us and see us. We'll be starting in just a second. I should also make sure my voice recorder is set to the right thing.
Oh yeah, I got to do that too.
Testing,
There's so much
1, 2,
stuff that has
3.
to be done.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff. Testing, 1, 2, 3.
Stupid Skype window hovers over everything. Choose your input. Yes, Microsoft Surface earbuds.
The best mic plugged into Dan's system.
Test. I know. Oh, let me get broadcast up. Testing. This is with noise cancellation on, clapping, and now turning noise and clapping again. All right, that worked. Oh boy, too many things open. All right, I guess I am ready. Are we live?
Yeah, we're live.
Oh, I have to play. Still looking a little yellow today. I guess we'll have to just go with it.
All right, I'm ready to record when you are.
2 seconds. Did my color just auto white balance just change for better or worse?
I noticed no difference on my end.
Fair enough.
Yeah, it could be XSplit. What's the thing? The NVIDIA broadcaster. Maybe that's toying with something.
Maybe.
Anyway, who cares?
All right, let's see. Let me bring this up. Stupid Skype window, stop.
Oh, that mini thumbnail that comes up. I hate that thing so much. So annoying.
All right. I am now recording.
I am now recording as well.
3, 2, 1. Welcome to the Windows Central podcast, episode 226 for, oh boy, I kind of screwed up, sorry. Welcome to the Windows Central podcast, episode 226 for May 21st, 2021. Hey everyone, Deanna Rubino here, joined with Zach Bowden for another exciting episode of the Windows Central podcast, where we're going to talk all things Microsoft Surface, Windows 10, and all the news that has happened this week. And I just realized I forgot to send the tweet out. There it goes. I'm a
Good start.
Yeah, dude, I'm all over the place today. I don't know what's going on. I did get my COVID vaccine, so maybe that's throwing my
probably it. Let's blame the vaccine.
Yes, it's wreaking havoc. Obviously, the 5G chips and all that stuff. So, but this week we're gonna have a pretty busy podcast. We'll try to keep it short, though. See how well that goes. The Windows 10 May 21st update is now live, so Zach will give us an update on that. Also, Microsoft confirmed Windows 10X is definitely not coming. So we'll rehash that topic as everyone likes to talk about it. Should Microsoft do a Windows 11? So Zach's going to talk about the impact of Sun Valley here. Oh, this is good. I could probably take off like the first 30 minutes of this podcast. I'll talk about how Surface Pro 3 turned 7 years old. Actually, it's not a huge story there, but there were some interesting highlights about that release, why I consider it to be pretty important to the Surface line, and including some going down memory lane of some funny stories that happened during its release. And maybe we'll also talk a little bit about Surface Pro 8. We'll also go through some reviews, roundups. We had a bunch this week on the site, so we won't spend a lot of time on all of them, but there was a new handheld for Xbox Game Pass. Basically, if you use your smartphone, the controllers, there's a new one out there. So that got reviewed. The Lenovo Idea Center Mini 5i got reviewed. I did the Lume Cube broadcast lighting kit and a Rocat Cone Pro. So we'll talk about that briefly. Let's see, Microsoft Edge. You can now hide the taskbar with vertical tabs. And I also discovered a new kind of feature under flags this week too in Edge. So we'll talk about some of that stuff. Microsoft Teams for personal use is out of beta. And is Xbox ready to start playing dirty? It's such a every time I can't just read it playing dirty without thinking bad things. But this is a editorial that Jez Corden wrote about the strategy behind Xbox and what may be changing there. Zach, how are you doing on this fine Friday?
I'm terrible. I fell over this morning and I've really hurt my ankle. So
what is with this staff at Windows Central? You're all way younger than me, and you all have back pains, blown out knees, you're falling over and hurting your ankle.
To be fair, my back's been fine for a while now, but I tripped and I rolled my ankle and it was severe and I thought I'd broken it for a bit, but it's sort of okay now. I just can't put weight on it. So I'm sitting down today, which is why those in the comments, I'm sitting down on the video. But yeah, that wasn't a fun way to start the day.
No, I imagine not. That is, well, hopefully you'll get better. I have not fallen. I did do last Sunday a 38-mile bike ride though. So
you did? Wow.
Yeah, that was kind of a new. I think that was my new best. It was pretty exhausting, and I did it while fasted. So as everybody probably knows on this podcast, I always talk about that. But I've been doing intermittent fasting since 2013. So I was going on 18 hours without eating when I did this, which goes to show you, by the way, the human body is very resilient. So just because you ever wake up and like, I missed breakfast, I'm dying, you'll survive. I guarantee you will survive.
Well, there's a moment where you feel hungry, and then there's that period of feeling hungry, and then it goes away, and then you don't you don't feel hungry again until you're dying.
It's like someone knocking at your door. It's like just like someone's got to deliver something important, or you have bad news coming. If you ignore it, it goes away. Yeah. It'll come back
like
later.
all problems.
Like all problems. This is actually a very poor Dan philosophy. Just ignore something and it'll go away.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can do it. And to be honest, I felt great. Like, I mean, yeah, I was a little tired and all that kind of stuff, but I felt amazing afterwards. And I don't know. It's just, I like kind of pushing myself. I'm obviously not getting younger, so it's kind of fun to do. But
what did you eat when you finished the fast?
When I got home?
Yeah.
So that's the other thing. When you do fast, I average, so I do what's called one meal a day now. I literally eat once a day, which is funny. But it's so easy. I only do this because I'm lazy. Like, it's just easy to eat one meal at the end of the day and do everything at once. But I usually just have a really big salad. And since I do kind of keto too, it's just, I put some cheese in there, some chicken, some eggs, a lot of dressing, croutons. I just eat a giant salad. Honestly, that kind of fills me up. And then I'll have like the main course, and then I'll usually have a cookie.
I was so hoping that you were like, and a pizza from Domino's.
oh yeah. Sometimes I do that, but also when you feel like, wow, I really crushed it today for health, you kind of like don't want to ruin it.
Ruin it, yeah.
Yeah, I haven't had Domino's for a little while, but they do owe me a free pizza. So.
Oh, really? Interesting.
So I may have to cash that in. Anywho, enough of that talk. Hopefully Zach gets better. Hopefully I can do another bike ride this weekend, assuming my vaccine shot doesn't knock me on my butt. That's going to be real interesting to see.
Yeah.
Anywho, let's get to the news this week. So drum roll, please. The May 21st update came out. May 2021 update.
Yes, and that's basically all the fanfare you need, because there's really nothing in this update. This is maybe the smallest feature update for Windows 10 yet, of all 6 years of Windows 10 being on market. Version 21H1. It has one noticeable feature in it, and it's really more for people who work from home rather than general people, and that is you can now set Windows to use an external Windows Hello peripheral when you have a device that has a built-in one. So for example, if you're using, say, a Surface of some kind and you have it docked to an external monitor with a webcam that has Windows Hello built into it, you probably want to use the webcam that's above the monitor if you're docked in. Previously, that wasn't possible, which was insane to me, and was one of the issues I had when I moved to this, tried to use the Surface Book as my only computer back in whenever it was December. They finally fixed that. So now in 21H1, you can set it so it uses the external device. And that's basically it. The other two notable changes aren't really notable to this audience. They're sort of enterprisey stuff. And I don't remember what they are, so I'm not going to talk about them. So there you have it. And it's also just like the 20H2 release from last year and the 19H2 release from the year before, in that it installs like a cumulative update. So when it shows up in Windows Update, you'll get the download and install prompt. You select it. It takes 5 minutes. Quick restart. Job's done. There's no like 20-minute install process, so it's not risky to install. There's no notable changes or enhancements outside of the thing I just mentioned, and that's basically it. But that's not the interesting news. In this blog post, when they announced the general availability of this update, they sort of buried some of the 10x stuff that we talked about last week in this blog post as well. And I absolutely despise how they've done this, but they did it this way. So I'll just sort of, I guess, read what they said, and we'll break it down as we go. So over the last year, we have shipped 3 important updates for Windows 10. More importantly, we continue to listen closely to customer feedback to ensure we evolve and adapt Windows to meet your needs today and in the future. In this context, we've continued to see fundamental changes in customer needs since we last shared our priorities for Windows in May 2020. Priorities for Windows is then referring to when they announced the shift from dual screen to single screen for Windows 10X last year. Following a year-long exploration and engaging in conversations with customers, we realized that the technology of 10X could be useful in more ways and serve more customers than we originally imagined. We concluded that 10X technology shouldn't be confined to a subset of customers. So instead of bringing a product called Windows 10X to market in 2021 like we originally intended, we are leveraging learnings from our journey thus far and accelerating the integration of key foundational 10X technology into other parts of Windows and products at the company. So this is them essentially reaffirming what they told us, Windows Central, last year as well. If you remember, when they announced the shift to dual screen, this wasn't in their blog post, but me and Dan had a sort of briefing with Microsoft. And in that briefing, they told us specifically that they were going to be bringing some of the Windows 10X technologies to Windows Desktop. So that's not a new thing, but they're positioning it here as if like that they've changed strategy again. This is what we're doing now, and that's why 10X isn't coming. This was always in the plan. So this is one of the issues I have with this announcement, them pretending that actually we're not bringing 10X to market because instead we've decided to put 10X stuff on desktop. They were always going to do that, and they still thought 10X was coming last year. They say, in fact, some of this is already reflected in the core of Windows, in Windows Insider Preview builds. For example, the new app container technology we're integrating into products like Microsoft Defender Application Guard, which I think is a cop-out because the new app container technology, what they're referring to there is the Win32 stuff, which they couldn't deliver, and the Microsoft Defender Application Guard stuff is kind of slightly different, and therefore, they're not bringing Win32 containerization to desktop. That's not what's happening here. Then they also mentioned the new touch keyboard, which is a nice improvement, and I'm glad that's on desktop, and some voice typing stuff as well. But they really don't talk about much else. The actual 10X stuff that we were interested in, they don't mention here at all. We kind of know that they're bringing that to desktop with Sun Valley. We'll get to that a bit later in the show. Our teams continue to invest in areas where the 10X technology will help meet our customer needs, as well as evaluate technology experiences both in software and hardware that will be useful to our customers in the future. Now, this bit is the bit that I think is just the most ridiculous. It's them patting themselves on the back in a way that they don't deserve. This shifting in thinking is an incredible example of the company's value of a growth mindset at work and exemplifies our customer-first focus. So this is all according to plan, according to Microsoft. This is everything, they're doing it exactly how they intended. Sure, they're not bringing 10X to market, but look on the bright side, we're bringing all of that good stuff to desktop instead. So I have so many issues with how this is worded. For example, the way they say, we're not bringing 10X to market in 2021 like we originally intended. That wording alone suggests that it could come in 2022, but it won't. It's not coming. It's dead. They could have just said, it's not happening. But they didn't say that. They had to, muddy the words, make it sound all weird and like, positive in ways that it's just not. And it annoys me because this entire bit here is for enthusiasts. No normal person is reading this blog post for the information of Windows 10X. This is for people like us, people who listen to this show. They could have been brutally honest here, and they wasn't. They were just very sort of, let's try and, spin make it a positive thing, and it's just not that. And yeah, so anyway, confirmed 10X not coming this year and likely never. And that's the end of that.
It was very much written like a corporate jargon
Oh,
generator.
for sure. Yeah, it's really bad. This is, everyone loves Microsoft these days. Microsoft has this great reputation. They weren't so positively looked upon, 10, 15 years ago. This paragraph, this like bit of this article just reminds me of the old Microsoft, where they were so they're not lying, but they're just not honest either. They're very dishonest about this sort of thing, and it annoys me greatly. And this has annoyed me for a long time. This is one of Microsoft's biggest issues: is their communication with enthusiasts. Their communication to the public, who cares? But with enthusiasts, their communication is so poor because they treat everybody externally like an idiot. Essentially, they're like, "You guys won't understand, so we're just going to tell you that this week's build is a servicing pipeline update thing to test things, or Windows 10 X isn't coming now because we decided, based on our huge brains and our research, that all of the work we put into 10X, years and years of work, we've just suddenly decided that actually we're going to put it on desktop instead. Not because 10X doesn't work. No, not because of that. Because we think it makes more sense to put it on desktop instead. It's insane to me. But there you go. They've confirmed it's not coming, and we will never see Windows 10X again. But we kind of will, because most of it's coming to Sun Valley anyway.
I still like to think there's just like one person at Microsoft who was in charge of 10X and was just showed up to meeting. He's like, and they're like, "Bill, do you have 10X for us?" He's like, "Oh, shoot. Sorry, guys. I forgot. You guys wanted that today? Oh," and like just
we wanted it 2 years ago, but that's okay.
Yeah, I was gonna say, just like showing up to like a college class and he forgot there's an exam that day.
Yeah.
Like, "Oh, you guys needed that? Oh,
yeah.
I'm sorry."
Well, it is a shame, because as we talked a bit about this last week when the rumor broke, Microsoft has been working on 10X, or a version of Windows on Windows Core OS, for a very long time now, and the fact that they've gotten this far with Windows 10X, essentially done. It's basically done at this point. The only problems it were having was the Win32 containerization, which they kind of removed anyway, and we're going to ship without. And without it, it was fine. I was using 10X on my Surface Go, and I preferred it.
On my Go.
And I preferred it. And for what they were trying to target the market with, I think it worked really well. Of course, as a desktop OS replacement, it was nowhere near ready. But for a thin and light, low-powered device, I think it was great. However, they've decided that it's not happening at all now, and what we're going to do instead is port the UX bits, the best of the Windows 10X UX to desktop, and that's what Sun Valley essentially is. Not one-to-one, of course. There will be changes to tailor it for desktop, And I think one of the reasons why they're doing this, and Sun Valley as well, is because when Microsoft announces Sun Valley, those of us who were following Windows 10X will see the resemblance and go, okay, it makes sense why they're not doing 10X now. But because of how this is all lined up, they can't obviously say, oh yeah, and we're just going to bring it to desktop, because that's their Sun Valley announcement and they want that to be a surprise. So yeah, that's basically everything in regarding 10X and the May 2021 updates. But on the subject of Sun Valley, I do want to talk a bit about it and my thoughts around what Microsoft could do with it in regards to announcing it. Because we kind of know at this point that the reason we haven't seen Sun Valley in insider builds yet is because they're waiting to announce it at an event, just like Apple does, or Google with Android 12, which was earlier this week. They wait for an event, they announce the whole new thing, and then they ship it to testers, and then later in the year it ships publicly. That's what they're trying to do with Sun Valley this year. But based on what we know about Sun Valley, in the sense that it's a significant UX overhaul for Windows, they're bringing a lot of the 10X stuff to desktop, albeit tailored for the desktop OS. Things like the centered taskbar and the centered start menu UI. Live tiles, I believe they're not part of the new start menu. All of that. So it's significant changes in a lot of areas. Would this be a good opportunity for Microsoft to rebrand Windows? Now, before you bite my head off, I know that Microsoft said 6 years ago that Windows 10 would be the last version of Windows. I think they're stupid for saying that, because it puts them in a corner that they don't need to be in. It's just unnecessary. Why would you limit yourself to that? In the sense that it's fine to commit to Windows as a service, but saying Windows 10 is the last version of Windows is just, it's unnecessary, because now you get to a point where you want to ship a significant update to your operating system, and you want to make a big deal about it. You want to sing and shout and tell the world that, a new version of Windows is here. That doesn't really work if you just call it the Windows 10 October 2021 update. It's like, okay, great. Like the last 5 updates, why is this one so much more different than the other ones? They need to call it something else. And sure, they could call it Windows 10.1 or Windows 10 abstract name here, whatever. But I think it makes more sense. It's just cleaner and easier if they increment the number of the operating system, Windows 10 to Windows 11. Because they've done this before, right? They did it to Windows 7, to Windows 8, and then to Windows 10. Why not go to Windows 11? It doesn't have to be an old school new release of Windows in the sense that you got to buy a new license and you have to, upgrade with like a CD and whatnot. Like, you don't need to, it doesn't have to be like that. Windows 11 could very easily just show up in Windows Update and Windows 10 users as another feature update. Instead of it saying Windows 10 October update, it just says Windows 11. You get it for free. This is how it works on macOS and iOS and Android and iPadOS. You don't use an iPad and the latest version of iPadOS is the iPadOS October 2021 update. It's iPadOS 15 or iPadOS 14. You get significant new releases every year. Why can't Microsoft do that with Windows 10? Because at the end of the day, it's just marketing. A lot of people were saying to me, oh, the enterprises would hate it. But it's no different from what we've currently got. The only difference is the name and the iconography and then the logo in the operating system. So, yeah, that's basically the editorial I wrote this week, talking about my thoughts on how Microsoft could announce Sun Valley. And if they announced it as Windows 11, it would be a big deal because it's a new version of Windows. It's coming to Windows 10 users for free, which is good PR. And it also gives OEMs the opportunity to sort of ship new hardware this fall with the Windows 11 branding on it. And people are now familiar with Windows 10. They see Windows 11. They go, oh, there's a new version of Windows out. That's interesting. So they are more inclined to maybe check it out or look into it and stuff, and maybe even buy a device. So, this is a very controversial topic in the Windows world for some reason, because a lot of people think that, they should just drop the 10 and just call it Windows. And I think me and Dan agree that that's a terrible idea for a number of reasons, not just one. The main reason is, of course, it's terrible for support and just it gets confusing. If you type into Google Windows, you're not just going to get Microsoft Windows. You're going to get all kinds of products involving Windows that, stick in the wall and stuff. So, yeah, I think it makes more sense to have an identifying factor in the product name. Windows 11, I think, is the most obvious choice. However, they could go with something else. They could go Windows, I don't know, Vienna, which is an old code name, actually. Windows abstract name, which they've done in the past. But if Microsoft wants to keep doing these big updates in the future, just give it a number and be done with it. It writes the story for you, Windows 11, and then in 2 years' time, if there's another major update to Windows 12, easy peasy. Apple doesn't go iOS 13, then iOS Starfield, iOS, 15. It doesn't make sense. Why does Windows have to have the most complicated branding system? Why can't we just do numbers like everybody else? So that's my 2 cents. Dan, I'm curious what you think.
Yeah, a lot to unpack there, obviously. If they're going to do something like Windows 11, I agree. It's like, I think with a UX layer change and some new, when you talk about like Mac OS, right, that's what everybody goes to. It's not like every release they do is massive either, right? They add a couple new features, and it still kind of gets a name change and all that.
Well, Mac OS was on Mac OS 10 for the better part of a decade, I think. They did 10.1, 10.2, but the reason why it felt different is because they gave every point release an abstract name, and they sort of marketed it as that.
And people have to remember that. It was Mac OS 10.2 or 10.15 or whatever, and then it had like the clever name after it. But technically, they still had numbers so that you can actually refer to the specific build of it. The clever name was just more for marketing and just all that kind of stuff. For sure. And the problem, you don't want to just rely on that. Is I have this problem sometimes too. Even when people talk about like Vista, I'm always like, wait, when did Vista come between? Was it Windows 7 or was it 95? And it's like, because the order changed, and the reason they shifted, they did Windows 3.1 and it was Windows 95 to the year. And then they did Windows 98 and second edition and all that. So they were kind of doing the year thing. And then they realized, oh, wait, the millennia is coming. We're going to call it Windows 1, Windows 01.
Yeah.
Like, so that posed a problem, because then it would have been like, why have Windows 98? Why do I want to go back down to 01? Like, I know that's dumb, but like, that's kind of like, that plays a part in the marketing of this stuff. And they've always like, I mean, there's a certain level where this stuff doesn't matter, right? But I think there should be sort of an orderly sequence. So it's still Windows 10. All right, now Windows 11. Like, I don't need to explain to you Windows 11 is a new version of Windows 10.
Yeah, right.
Like, you can automatically get that. Now, if you want to put a clever name after it and call it Windows 11 Sun Valley, sure, why not? All right. I mean, that makes it feel better. I don't think it's crucial.
Me neither.
But apparently, like people like pretty names. I will say, however, Google was doing this forever with its stupid dessert names for Android.
They were.
And at some point, halfway through the alphabet, they're like,
this is getting hard.
This is getting hard. It's getting a little stupid. I mean, it was just, and I mean, websites would try to guess what the next dessert was going to be called. It was just like, really, is this what we want to focus on? So now they're just like, it's just called Android 12. Deal with it. And there's something nice to that simplicity. And it works with, I mean, just how this stuff is very subjective, right? I remember someone on Twitter was interacting with us and said, for one, they were like, so what, they're going to do Windows 12 and Windows 13, but Windows 13 is bad luck. So, and I'm like, well, first of all, that's stupid.
Yeah.
Like, we have iOS 13. Apple apparently didn't go, it's bad luck, that number. We can't make an operating system. And I didn't really see the media going, they shouldn't call it iOS 13.
Right, yeah.
But even if they wanted to, they could have skipped it anyway. We did skip Windows 9, so it's not like there's something here. But there's also this other angle, which is it is important for marketing. So if you're HP or Dell or Lenovo and you're putting out a brand new laptop, and it's going to run, of course, Windows 10 or version of Windows. But if it has Windows 11, it does give you an opportunity to, just by saying Windows 11, it's new. It's new.
Yeah.
There's a new version of Windows on there. And it's, presumably tied better to the hardware and all this. There's going to be kind of optimizations going on and new features. Like, it gives companies a new chance to talk about Windows as it's like new. And that is important for marketing. Reporting on the same version of ships with Windows 10, the same version of Windows 10 that came out 5 years ago. It's like, it just, there's, like I said, an irrationality to this, but at the same time, that's marketing, right? So
yeah, I mean,
I kind of think they should do this. I don't see the big deal.
Me and you, we've both had a chance to sort of peek at Sun Valley here and there. The UX changes that are coming are kind of significant. They're not Windows 7 to Windows 8 significant. It still looks like Windows. But if you look at Windows 10, the Sun Valley stuff is different. So I think that alone warrants the move to Windows 11 or like a new version of Windows. Because if you look at Windows 10 up until now, from 2015 to today, it kind of looks the same. Sure, bits and pieces have changed here and there, but more or less, it's the same operating system. Throwing in a brand new UX or a significantly redesigned UX, which is what Sun Valley is doing, that sort of throws a curveball into the mix because Windows 10 is this known thing now. This is what it is. If we change it significantly 6 years in, that doesn't, it's not a great thing to do for your existing customers. And sure, Windows 11 would likely, if they called it Windows 11, would be just an update for Windows 10 users. But it will probably be like in the optional thing for a while, and slowly but surely will it be forced upon people. So it's, and that gives users time to sort of figure out the new UX and learn it and research it as well before Windows 10, runs out of support, which I think it has an end of support date in 2025. So, that would be when they have to upgrade to Windows 11 or something along those lines. But the point is, the UX changes are significant enough that they could call it Windows 11 and would be able to get away with it. Like, people wouldn't go, oh, that's not worth Windows 11. People will see what they're doing. Go, oh, it makes sense. It makes sense that it's called Windows 11. Has a new start menu, has a new taskbar interface, all that other stuff. It makes sense.
They centered the icons.
They centered the icons, yeah. It would make sense. So
there's also, besides the actual changes that would ship with a Windows 11 to signify something, there's also this strategy change that we've been hearing about and Panos has talked about, which is this idea that they're doubling down on Windows, right? They're reinvesting into it. The PC market share is doing very well. Laptop makers won't stop sending me laptops, and they keep innovating around it, and there's still a lot more to come. And so it's not just what will be coming, presumably in the fall. it's this idea that Microsoft is reinvested in Windows, and this new version of Windows 11, even if it's still technically Windows 10, which itself is still technically Windows 8 and Windows 95, right? Is going to be a new era where we're going to start to see a little bit more innovation, more focus on it, new technologies coming along, and so it does help drive that momentum. So
I wouldn't be surprised.
And they're riding a wave, right? We're just talking about there's a wave right now of interest in PC, and Qualcomm did this thing, was it 2 weeks ago with Lenovo, talking about the future of the PC, and they're talking about how, the PC will never replace the phone, but it's really now become important again in people's lives for the way we work digitally. Yeah, phones are great, but at some point you're going to need something they can actually work on. That's where the computer comes in. And they see this not just as a blip with the pandemic, but as like a new era, basically, of computing. So I think they should probably do this.
Yeah, and I think you're right about the innovation thing in the sense that Sun Valley is what we know now, but I don't think Sun Valley is the only update. If they were doing 10X, maybe Sun Valley would have been like here's a big update for desktop, now let's focus on 10X. But now 10X isn't happening. The future of Windows is desktop, so they can do nothing but update desktop going forward. So Sun Valley, I assume, is just the beginning, and then into 2022, 2023, we'll see even more stuff come down the line. Because I've seen a lot of documentation around Sun Valley. I don't know if they're going to ship all of it. They probably won't. So the stuff that gets cut can be Windows 12 next year, or whatever. Like they can do more significant updates to Windows if they're willing to relax the branding around Windows, because so far they've backed themselves into this Windows 10 is the last version of Windows corner that I've said at the beginning of this is unnecessary for them to be in. They should be able to do 10.1 or 11, 11.1, 11.2, 12. Right. Just make it easier. Why does it have to be confusing? Why do we need to do Windows 10 version 21H2 May 2021 update? What's going on? Why? That's not a marketable brand. It doesn't sound cool. When you've got snappy iOS 14, easy. Windows 11, easy. Windows 10, 21H1, October 21 update, terrible. But that's what we've got right now. It just makes no sense. It's so uncool.
And we should point out, Apple, despite having those, clever, fancy names, which really aren't that clever or fancy, they don't do that for iOS.
No, they
iOS
don't.
Is just iOS 14.2, iOS 12.1. It's just, and they've been doing those point updates way more frequently now.
They
I think they just came out. What are we even on now? iOS 14, right?
14 point. I think they're on 0.7 now or something, which is I think the most.
The 0.7 beta just came out, was about to come out, and we haven't even wrapped up the public 0.6 beta or something like that. But they usually kind of only do a couple of points before they jump to the next fifth, higher solid number.
And Apple does these point releases, but it's not like people start calling it iOS 14.7.
Oh my
it's still
God.
iOS 14.
Dude, I'm on the betas for them, and I'm like, okay, let me look at now your Apple Watch supports heart rate features in Sri Lanka, and I'm like, awesome. I mean, it's not I realize if you're in Sri Lanka, congratulations. I'm very proud of you and happy that you're getting this new feature. As someone here in the U.S., I really do not care. And for me, I couldn't even tell you. Well, iOS 14 itself had the nice update with the widgets and stuff like that. But overall, let's be honest here, I don't think the iOS experience has really changed much in years. Mostly because they don't allow you to really do much with that stupid home screen still, which is so whatever. I find this is it's very subjective, but I could see them totally doing this to usher in sort of a new era of the PC, which is already happening around us as we speak. So,
and I mean, as well, it would give Microsoft the chance to update the branding around Windows. We've had the Windows 10 logo for a while, but we've also had the Windows flag, like the sort of angled squares, since Windows 8. It's been around since 2011, 2012 at this point. It would be a good opportunity to update that logo with Microsoft's more modern iconography that they've introduced with Fluent Design and stuff. Back when 10X first started development, they were using the Microsoft logo in those builds before they, I guess at the last minute, changed it to a Windows flag. I wouldn't be surprised if Sun Valley has a Microsoft logo, because they've definitely been kicking around that idea. And if it's gradiented and stuff, it would totally align with the rest of their iconography. But we'll have to wait and see what they do. We are expecting. The rumor is that they will hold a Windows event sometime in June. June, July, but I think June is kind of what we're all hearing. A lot of people looking to build for Windows stuff. I wouldn't hold my breath. Build is a very Azure developer-focused event. Windows is sort of pretty low down on the roster these days. But the good news is we are hearing that there's a dedicated Windows event coming after Build, so that's when all the good Windows stuff will be announced, hopefully. But I think that's everything for our Windows segment.
I just want to point out just how some people in comments are just awful at this name stuff too. Like, I'm gonna make fun of some of you guys. This is what happens when you do comments. All right. Why don't they call it Windows PC OS? This solves nothing. Again,
it's so lame. It's just a lame name.
Yeah, for one, it's very lame. It's very generic. Two, like, it doesn't help the idea of like there's a new version out, because you still got to go. Yeah, but what version are you on? And you have to look up WinVer and get that little number. So there's still a numerical system there that's missing. Microsoft OS. Again, I can't, like, now you're just getting even more generic. Then someone goes, why not Windows Element whose atomic number matches present calendar year?
Everyone's a scientist, so it should be fine.
Keep it simple.
Yeah.
There's that expression, a kiss, right? I don't want to call you stupid, but, keep it simple. Like, why make this overcomplicated? So what, you're clever so that 2% or 1% of people understand what you're referring to? Like, this is just like, everybody's overthinking this. Just call it Windows 11.
Yeah.
And then if there's another version, 11.1.
Yeah,
like,
or 12.
We have a system here. We don't need clever names. If you want to call Windows 11 overall Sun Valley, go ahead. But I don't think you need to do that, because why? Just call it Windows 11 and move on. I don't know. I feel like people spend way too much time.
A lot of people think that the letters OS should be in the title. OS is such an unattractive acronym. It's so geeky and nerdy. Chrome OS does it. I don't know how they get away with it, but
iPad OS.
I guess, and Apple never mind.
Does it all.
I take it back.
Is geeky.
I take it back. I just think Windows OS, it just makes it lame. I don't know why. Yeah.
And here's why you don't do Windows 21. Someone's saying Windows 21. Why, Zach? You figure out, why don't you do Windows 21?
I don't know. Why don't you do Windows 21?
Because it implies you're going to do Windows 22.
Oh, I see. Yeah, you're right. But again, so I had that same thought, but people on Twitter were like, yeah, but they did 95 and then 98.
Right, but you don't. I think it implies that you're going to do one every year or something like that.
Well, okay, but Office does, Office 2016, 2019, 2021. They don't do it every year, and no one seems to complain. So they could do 21, but I think it looks ugly. So Windows 11 makes more sense to me.
Yeah. Well, Samsung did do that jump too, right? They did.
Yeah. If Microsoft done this last year with 2020, I would have agreed. Windows 20, perfect. But no, they've missed the boat, so they have to call it Windows 11 now.
Oh, well, doesn't really matter. Let's move on to some other brief news. Microsoft Teams for personal use is out of beta. Who knew? Who cares?
It exists.
I don't know what was being tested in beta. I didn't even read the full, I don't know. This is not something I see. This is going to get canned. Sorry. I do not see this being used. People who live in Microsoft
it's the name
Teams,
of it. The name of it's terrible.
The name is terrible. Yeah, for personal use. I mean, they could have rebranded. What they should have done, of course, is just taken the underlying technology of Teams, rebranded it into a consumer product with a different name. And then the inside people, nerds on this podcast would have understood, oh, that's basically just Teams for consumers. But it would have been a completely different product. They didn't want to do that. They didn't want to invest too much in it. I can tell you, though, if you use Microsoft, there's two types of people in the world who use Microsoft Teams. People who like it and they use it for work. And then they maybe come home and they are going to try to force their family to use this because they're sick. These are usually your IT people. And then there's the rest of the world who uses Microsoft Teams because they're told to use it by their IT people. And you probably break that down into two groups, people who are okay with it and the other people who absolutely hate it. And these people aren't going to want to be like, oh, let me take the same tool I use every day at work home for my family and my friends. Like, it's just not going to happen. It still has that existing problem of trying to get people onto a new network, whether it's Telegram, it's Signal, of course you have iMessage. it's really hard to get people to convert to it. And I get there's benefits here with Teams, the idea of a shared calendar. It's sort of the idea of rooms, that we had on Windows Phone back in the day, which again was a brilliant idea. The problem with rooms was you had to have a Windows Phone for it. It didn't work on desktop and other Microsoft products. And so it was by itself naturally limiting, but it was a great idea. I just don't see this as something catching on.
I can't get past the branding. It's not just Microsoft Teams for personal use, but it's Microsoft Teams. That branding to me just screams enterprise, business, work, corporate. Yeah. I would never tell my friends who aren't into technology at all, let alone Microsoft, to use Microsoft Teams to communicate with me. It's just if they called it like Microsoft Groups or something, or Group Me.
Yeah.
That's
probably why they didn't call it Microsoft Groups, but yeah that would have been a way better name.
It needs to have a much more like a brand-friendly, consumer-friendly name for this to even begin to take off. Because not only does Teams imply, work and stuff, but also I would never call my family a team. I'm not going to use Teams to communicate with my family. It's just insane to me. But they've decided to go with this, and I don't think it's going to work. I bet they rebrand it at some point.
It's going to just slowly disappear is what I imagine happens. And I mean, shout out to the Office team. They do Office very, very well.
They do.
There's no argument there. Best in the world.
Yep.
But they need to stay in their lane. When it comes to consumer tech, we know that Microsoft is just, they're the nerd IT guy who's like, I got an idea. And it's just like, you're so out of touch. Go back and rewire the server.
It would have made more sense for them to call this Skype and just say, this is the new Skype. And it's just the client is Teams, the back end is Teams, but it's called Skype. And, they should have built a system that ports all of your conversations and contacts over to the Teams for Life, whatever they want to call it, client. Branded Skype, job done. People would still use that, and Microsoft wins by having it be the Teams client and the Teams backend. But they've decided to push Teams.
I love how, too, the unofficial name, the Microsoft Teams for Life,
is a way better name. It's a way better name.
Not perfect. Better than for consumers, though. It's just like, good Lord. And GroupMe would be awesome here, too. And listen, GroupMe's been getting some cool updates. I've been, following them on the site, doing, it's getting more modern features, but that's a small team. And I could see maybe they're getting a bigger budget, maybe, and they're trying to build out GroupMe, but it's still not getting like some massive infusion from Microsoft to be taken seriously, which is a shame because that really is their biggest potential messenger. But they have too many options, right? What they should have done is like a version of GroupMe should just be built into Windows 10. Or Windows 11 if they want to do it. And that would be basically what the people bar was going to be. It allows you, because the one cool thing that we should have on like Windows 10 with the idea with this people bar was, if Zach's in my contacts and he's on Windows 10, I should have like ability to pin him to my start bar and have a quick message him right in my taskbar and send him a file and he sends me a file and all that kind of stuff. Then we wouldn't need to use Telegram. And it should just be a thing that's associated with your Microsoft account. Like your family is on Microsoft, have a Microsoft account, and then you could just pin their thing to the taskbar, or even just have a single people, you hit it and it's just their little face icons, right? And you could just message them directly. You can send them files, send them your location. You can, share links and all this kind of stuff. Like, if they had done that, and then you build that client onto mobile devices like Android and iOS and have one that works there too, you just basically built out a really robust messaging system, and throw in Skype video support into it too. So you can just quickly call Zach. I hit a button, I can call him or do a voice call. Yeah. Like they have all this technology. They could have built it natively into the operating system so it operates more similar to what Apple does, but instead they're just trying to, they're scattered all over the place. They got GroupMe, they got Skype, they got Microsoft Teams, and that doesn't even touch what people actually use, which is Signal, which is Telegram, which is WhatsApp. It's just scattered. They don't have a and to not to total slam on Microsoft. It's not like Google's figured this out either, right? Google hasn't really. They keep trying, but they keep canceling their products as well. So they're all over the place. But I don't know. It just bothers me that they should have done more with the People Hub, make it an inbuilt messaging service that worked across all Windows 10 devices.
It's crazy how quickly they abandoned the My People thing. It was introduced with a UI that was incredibly rudimentary. It was not what they envisioned it was going to be when it shipped. With the promise that they were going to update it and actually finish it at some point, and they never did. And to this day, it's still in Windows, taking up valuable space on my hard drive, but it's just not enabled by default anymore. And that's just the Microsoft way, really. You throw something to the wall, instantly doesn't stick, forget about it.
Although Samsung does that too. So.
I'm sure, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for everything we make fun of on Microsoft, Samsung has something similar too. I did that tweet this week about the HP Elite X3. Back in 2016, we had it as a, put it into the stand, went to a larger display with a keyboard, a mouse, an external hard drive. It was a whole computer, and it worked surprisingly well. And if you, it couldn't run 32 apps directly, but HP had their own streaming service basically that allowed you to stream Win32 apps through the system. It was a brilliant idea, but it just didn't catch on, right? And there's probably all sorts of reasons. But when I look back at that photo in 2016, one, I'm blown away we were doing it back then. Two, I'm also surprised, but not kind of surprised it didn't catch on. But Samsung still has DeX. Who talks about that? I know there's like two of you who are like, I use DeX every day. But
if Samsung cared about DeX, at this point, they would have released a laptop shell, a Samsung branded laptop shell that has the S21 can be used as the trackpad. You slip it in, just like the Razer thing, that the Razer prototype. That Samsung would be all in, and that would be one of their first products. But because they've not done that, I don't think DeX is a real thing they care about.
I forgot about that Razer prototype. Yeah, for those who don't know, back when they had that was because they don't have their phone anymore.
Yeah.
But the idea was you would have this shell and you just drop the phone in, and then the phone became the trackpad. It was a giant.
That's such a genius idea, and like that idea alone is the reason why I'm sad this Windows Phone isn't around the most now. Because Windows is the perfect platform for that kind of form factor. Because Android isn't great on laptops and desktops, and Apple's never going to do that. Windows was the only one that could even attempt that back in 2015, 2016, and they never did, and it's such a shame. But yeah.
Someone say Samsung at least stuck to their gun, though. They stuck with their curved edge screen thing for years until it became a thing.
Yeah, Apple also stuck with their Magic Keyboard for however long, and that was great.
I hate curved displays, and
I don't mind them.
I think they're terrible. They look amazing. That's the thing. They do look really nice because it falls off and hides the bezel. I think for usability, they're not very good, though. It's the reason why Apple went back to its classic flat design.
Mm-hmm. If they were to do a curved screen on the center divide on the Duo, I think that would make more sense because you don't hold it there, right? You hold it on either side when you're in book mode, and
so like that, that just goes back. They have a patent for that.
Yeah,
literally.
I'm sure.
So people listening to his podcast, what we're saying is on the Surface Duo right now, where the screen comes to the hinge, the center part, it's just kind of flat, just kind of ends a little bit. They have a patent where they curve that, just like the edges of your phone, and it curves down. So it gives the illusion that you have more screen, and it hides a little bit the gap, the gutter between the two screens because you get more display. It also completely mirrors the whole concept behind Duo, which is it's a small book. Yes. That's how books work. Mm-hmm. The pages curve into the center, and it just looks nice. So if you did that digitally, that would even give you. And Panos has been kind of big on this idea ever since they did the 3x2 aspect, which is that you make something digital that's familiar to the analog. It's based, and there's a whole science to this. Even biology. There's this study, I forgot the name of it, but where you take biological mechanics and you apply them to real world like robotics. Like that's when you see Boston Robotics? I forgot the name of the company that makes those robot dogs. Mm-hmm. There's a reason why the legs work like real dog legs. Like it turns out Mother Nature has been a really good test bed for engineering. and what and structure. And you see it all the time. They find like how diamonds work and all this kind of stuff, that they can then structure materials based off of nature and get the same properties. So this idea of taking what's out in nature and or what we know in the analog and bring it to the digital has a strong following, and I'm a big believer of it. So that is something I'd love to see with Duo. They own the patent to it, so maybe we'll see. Their patent actually goes a little bit further too, where because it curves so much interior, when you close it, it actually now has some display on the binder that shows. And they were going to like use that for maybe displaying information or notifications, right? Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of opportunity here. We'll have to wait and see though. Speaking of designs, in 3x2, Surface Pro 3 turned 7 years old. And I'd like to thank OneDrive for reminding me this. I've been using OneDrive so long now that it goes back like 8-9 years for me. And so I was going through the memories thing, which reminds me every day. And it was 7 years ago. I was in New York City covering this release.
Wow. And
I was just like, oh, yeah, wow, 7 years ago today. It really feels like yesterday. In fact, I saw what I was wearing. I was like, I still have that jacket like in my closet. I thought it was only like it felt like it was only 3 years old, but Jesus, 7 years old. But that was also a landmark event for us as a site. That was the first Surface event we were invited to, which was, for those who don't know, back in the day, Microsoft didn't pay attention to us.
Yeah.
So we were invited to a lot
of
of
the
stuff.
Pro 3 as well is the most popular review on the Windows Central YouTube channel, or one of the most popular. I think it might be the most popular product review on the Windows Central YouTube channel with over 1 million views. So the Pro 3 was good to us, or good to the site. I wasn't part of Windows Central back then, but it's good to you guys.
Yeah, so it came out, it was announced May 20th, 2014, which is crazy.
I remember.
And it was a very landmark device, and I'll go through a couple of reasons why. First of all, this was the first Surface that went 3x2.
Right.
Up to that point, it was all 16:9. 3x2, I remember sitting with Mary Jo Foley and Paul Thurrott and a couple other people with Surface engineers in a bar, which Rattled Hum, which closed now. Such a good bar. But we were talking about it, and there's this idea that, they want to basically make what is it effectively a notepad. A notepad is 3x2 in digital form, and that's why they went with that aspect. And it's turned out to be a winner, right? We're all now, it was starting around 2017. I was like, everybody should do 3x2. And, it's finally, we started to see a lot more of it now. But it was the first to be 3x2. They also, let's see, what else did they do? Oh, it was the first to switch to Intrig. So they were using Wacom up until that point. They went to Intrig, which they later bought less than a year after that they liked Intrig so much. Some people still don't like Intrig, whatever. It was also the first to switch to Platinum. Up to that point, all Surfaces were black.
Oh, yeah.
And so this became the Surface Platinum colorway, which we all know and love. And that's Zach's default choice, of course.
Yes.
And that's why it was kind of ironic, of course, when it was 2017, I think it was, they brought black back as an option.
Yeah.
Which was kind of cool. But then we're all like, oh, yeah, it's black. It looks so cool. And then we all got it. It was like, too many fingerprints. Platinum's better. And that's why I was excited with the Pro X when they released that in Platinum, because that is the superior color.
Oh,
there.
yeah, for sure.
The size switched from 10.8 inch at full HD. Wow, that's crazy. It was 10.8 inch full HD. It went to 12 inches at 2160 by 1440.
Yep.
So it was a bigger jump in resolution. It was the first to offer a Core i7 as an option. They also improved the cameras. It was the first time they did dual 5 megapixel cameras. This is when the cameras actually started getting really good on them. And to this day, Surface still leads on web cameras on devices. They have the best webcams on any laptops. That may be challenged soon. HP has their Dragonfly Max coming out, which has a big webcam on it, but we'll see. It's also the first to feature connected standby. That was an important technology. That was the one where basically you would close the lid and it would still be running in the background, but at a lower power state, and you could still get notifications in and all that kind of stuff. It was a lighter chassis. The trackpad. Up to this point, the trackpad was just a touch trackpad, but it didn't depress. It didn't click.
That's right, yeah.
This new one was also 60% larger, which is massively bigger. It was made had the beaded glass texture on it, so it's very smooth. They also were starting to introduce their own driver technology, I believe, at this point, and it actually physically clicked.
And it was precision as well. I don't think the previous two were.
Yeah, I don't know if it was called precision back then. I forgot, but it was, like I said, when they started using their own drivers. That's when they started trying to improve upon that. So there was a lot of firsts.
You're missing. I believe you're missing as well. This was the first kickstand that could go. It was the fulcrum hinge all the way down.
Correct. So up to this point, the Surface Pro 1 had I think
it was one position.
Oh, one. Oh, it was one position.
And then the Pro 2 had two positions.
Two had two positions. And then 3 got the fully adjustable one, which was
a life changer.
Yeah, no one had done that before. And it was crazy because you could adjust it to any angle, but then when you would go touch the screen,
it would wobble.
It would hold. Yeah. It was they were very proud of that. That's when engineering came.
Oh, and the Pro 3 was also the first one to do the thing where you could lift the keyboard, which made it 1,000 times more lappable, which was a big change as well. And all of 90% of these things are in the latest Surface Pro 7 Plus. You know, the design has not changed much. I believe they sort of, with the Pro 4, they made the screen a bit bigger and they added Windows Hello, of course. And
they
then
had the Windows button too. Remember?
Yeah, the Pro 3 had the Windows button.
That was on the bottom, but because the keyboard now attached, they had to move it to the side.
Yeah.
And remember that would vibrate when you would touch it?
Yeah, that's because it was Windows 8, right? They still had the tablet UI and stuff. But when they moved to the Pro 4, they got rid of that. They made the bezels a bit thinner. As a result, they added Windows Hello. Yes. And then with the Pro 5, they basically kept the Pro 4, except they changed the chassis ever so slightly so that instead of it being sort of angled like the Pro 3 and 4 was, it's slightly curved, and then they've kept that, and that's what we've had with the Pro 5, 6, 7, and 7 Plus.
Yep. Yeah, Surface Pro 4 was really the one where it became what we now know as the classic design. Right. It went to a 12-inch to 12.3 inch, increased the resolution, and as Zach said, all those other little changes. But then there were also funny controversies. There was, of course, the Marvel Wi-Fi issues. It had a lot of Wi-Fi.
They kept that for too long.
Yeah, eventually. Well, they had to have had a contract or something with them, but eventually people complained enough and they switched only a couple of years ago. There was also on CNN, they were all using Surface Pro 3s, but Jake Tapper had his iPad behind it and people called him out on it and all that. It was kind of dumb, but it was kind of funny too. And he was like explaining how he was using both. That became the start of sort of, is it an iPad or a Surface? Yeah. These people don't know. The NFL was calling it an iPad, and Microsoft had to basically, literally have meetings with them, be like, this is an iPad, this is a Surface. And, it was also, this was the period where Surface still wasn't taken seriously.
Right, yeah.
It was regarded as an experiment. It was goofy. Who needs it? It doesn't work well. And it was Surface between Surface Pro 3 and 4 where things changed. Surface Pro 3 later that year, for January, post-holiday season, was the first time the Surface division reported $1 billion in revenue. They later now hit $2 billion just this year. Although, you can argue, it's not because Surface Pro necessarily grew more. I think it still sells very well, but they've diversified their lineup so much since then. There are just way more Surface devices. And we look at 2 billion in that context, that's very slow growth, right? It's nice growth, it's modest, but they're doing better every quarter, but it's also not a wave of people jumping in. But so there were just all sorts of kind of cool things with that device that really set the precedent. But as Zach pointed out, we've had the same one now since up through Surface Pro 7 Plus even.
Yeah.
It really starts to feel like, Surface Pro 4 was also the first of the Windows Hello.
I did mention that,
But yeah.
The Pro 3, I think, is what really put them on the map in regards to continuing Surface. Had the Surface Pro 3 flopped, would we have Surface today? I'm sure maybe they would have tried the books. I'm sure they had that design or in the works at that point already. But other than that, I feel like probably not. It would have certainly been the end of the Pro line, I think. But the Pro 3 did well, and that now we're here today with a whole bunch of different surfaces, and that's a good thing, I think.
Yeah, now they could just redo Surface Pro 8.
Yeah.
I mean, you could actually argue that Surface Pro X is kind of the future of Surface Pro.
I definitely think it's a look into the future of the Surface Pro's design. I think they will certainly continue doing the Intel version, and I think what they'll try and do is just sort of align the designs across the Pro X and the Pro 8 as best they can, obviously, with an Intel chip. But I would be surprised if the Intel version remains the same design forever going forward.
Yeah, they really need to. I mean, I don't think we need to rattle off, but thinner bezels would be nice. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm really getting mad at their display technology. Yeah. It's just getting, I'm really getting angry now. I just, preview here. I just got in a new XPS 13. It's still the 9310. It didn't change the processor, but now there's a 4K touch OLED option. It's the same price as the other 4K, which is really kind of nice. So I'll be looking at that display soon. But that one has HDR 400, Dolby Vision, wide color gamut, and it's anti-reflective. Like, nailed it. Nailed it. That's what a company is supposed to do for a premium device in 2021 for a display. And if I swear to God, if Microsoft doesn't do something like that for Surface Pro 8, I'm going to have a talk with Panos.
Panos, sit down. We need to have a word.
It's ridiculous. But no, if you think about it, I mean, the pen technology hasn't changed.
No, it hasn't.
Display tech hasn't changed in about 4 years. The audio hasn't changed in about 4 years. Like, nothing has changed. The camera hasn't improved. And I don't want to completely say that. They are doing minor engineering things that are making things slightly better. There's no doubt about it. But, like, in terms of breakthrough features, right? When you look at the new iPad, you know about this. The new iPad reviews came out. Everybody's just like, it's the best display on anything I've ever seen in this world, period, right? Like, that's the work Apple's doing. They're creating literally they're using micro LED technology. They have anti-reflective layers on it. They have a very good pencil system. Like, they're doing all that. And Microsoft is like, oh, this is the same display from 4 years ago. Check it out. You're like, really? You guys are supposed to be like
innovating.
Oh,
you know what? I think I've mentioned this before, but I do think we're at a turning point here where we've had these designs for so long now. Microsoft must have been doing something behind the scenes for X amount of years. We had the Neo and the Duo. Those were the sort of the big new form factors. But with the Pro 8 and the Laptop 5 or the Book 4, whatever, I do think we're going to see some significant design changes, and that hopefully includes some new innovations as well, better screen technology, better pen technology. I think a lot of people are hoping for, because if that's not coming, what is the Surface team doing? They're just building prototypes internally and then throwing them away, and then I'm finding them and getting in trouble for it. It's like, what are they spending their money on? They need to show us what they're doing, because as we mentioned, the Pro design's been around for too long now. There's no way they haven't thought up a new Pro design internally. There's no way.
Yeah, so hopefully we get that this year. As what just Ty says in the comments, here's a gigabrain idea: license M1 from Apple and put it in the Pro X.
Yeah, I'm sure Apple will be happy to give them the M1. So,
I love when people say this stuff. Okay, first of all, Apple don't want to license their technology. They're not licensing it to anyone because it's their tech, and they're going to keep it to themselves. That's what they do, and they're never going to license it. So literally not an option. Just can't do it. Second of all, you can't do it even if they would license it, because the way the M1 chip works, it's contingent upon the operating system as well as the rest of the hardware and the device. What makes it special is that whole idea of it works vertically and horizontally across all their hardware and services. Yeah, you can get to run Windows. Obviously, you can do that now in a MacBook, but it won't be completely optimized in that sense. But like we said, it's not going to happen. They're never going to license it. That said, there's nothing magical about the M1. I know you all think it's filled with Smurfs and magic and unicorns. It's not. It's a 5-nanometer chip that's been optimized to run on Mac OS. That's it. Qualcomm's already down to 5 nanometer. AMD's going to be getting down to 5 nanometer. IBM just got down to 2 nanometers. You get down that low, you can start to make really optimized chips. And in terms of the battery life, don't forget they're sticking the M1 in existing laptops with batteries that are the size for Intel. We've actually really never seen that on Qualcomm ARM devices. We've never you can't really buy a 3.5-pound ARM device that has a big battery in it. Because every time they've been doing an ARM device, they try to make them super thin and light, like what Samsung did. So, these are very different things. Anywho, that was a side rant because sometimes I just see silly stuff in comments. Let's quickly go through. Oh, we're just hit an hour. So much for the short podcast. Reviews this week. Was it Jez reviewed GameSir X2 USB-C mobile controller. What a great name. There's a company called GameSir. So why you want to know about this thing? So this is like I said, this is where you drop your Android phone into. I think maybe you could probably do your iPhone too. No, it's Type-C. Can't. Sorry. You basically drop your Android phone into this. Up until a Note 20 Ultra apparently will fit into it, even with a case. And it uses the Type-C to connect, which is better because you don't want crappy Bluetooth, which stinks for gaming. This connects directly, and it's got the little controllers on the side, just like basically a Nintendo Switch. And you can, of course, just play any game on it. But if you're going to use Xbox game streaming, it's really killer because it works well with that. So Jez did that review, and he liked it. He actually says, this is interesting, it's better than Razer's offerings. Their Kishi is their main competitor. He says if he had to just go with one, he'd actually go with this. It's $60, so it's not super cheap, but he says the quality is really good. He did have a couple minor complaints, but overall, if you're looking for a mobile gaming thing for your Android phone, that's probably your best bet. Cale Hunt reviewed the Lenovo Idea Center Mini 5i. I'm not even familiar with this. This is for those of you who want basically a, what do you call the Apple MacBook? The Mini. If you want basically a MacBook Mini, this is what that is. It's, we've been having these in PCs for years, but it's a little small cube and it has a nice cloth fabric on it. And you can even upgrade components and stuff in it, but it's a little PC that you can then connect up peripherals too. So it's a good home PC if you want to use it but don't want a tower. So go check out that review. I reviewed Lume Cube broadcast lighting kit. I talked about that on the podcast recently. Do I have it in front of me? No, I don't. It's a small little cube that's a light, and it's really good for those of you who work from home and or travel and are always living on video calls. This is basically a portable light studio. But what's neat about it is it's a battery bank with a 112 light LED on it that's adjustable for brightness as well as color temperature. So you can make yourself look pretty. But because of the battery, which can last up to 90 minutes at max brightness or something like 16 hours at low brightness, you can just set this up and have no wires. And it's just very nice, clean and setup. And it comes with, it's $99, but you can get it as cheap as like $80 on Amazon or direct from Lume Cube. But it has a tripod where you can mount it on that goes up. It can go up over like a 20 or 30-inch display. So you can put it over there, and it folds up and it's compact. But there's also a suction cup mount, which then goes to the back of your laptop. And it's really kind of cool. You just put it on, has a little lever, pumps the air out, and just sticks. And it looks really natural. I'm going to use this when I travel. This thing is tiny, and I can just throw it in my bag. And so whenever I have to do a video call or we have to do a podcast, I can look like a human and not some weird person in a dark room. So go check out that review. And then let's see, Rich Edmonds reviewed the Rocat, I believe that, yeah, Rocat Cone Pro with a K. And that's a new, well, it's not a new, it's their updated gaming mouse. So if you're really into hardcore first-person shooter gaming stuff, this is a mouse to take a look at. He liked it a lot. He actually gave it, I think it was 4.5 out of 5 stars. It also has 2 cool LEDs in the click pads, which is kind of nice. So if you like glowing stuff, there you go. But go check out all those reviews. We'll have more of those. I did also post finally the CLX, not the review, but the ordering and shipping of that giant mammoth computer, which I'm going to try to review this weekend finally for next week. And like I said, I have the XPS 13 with OLED and plus a bunch of other laptops coming out. And there's some announcements next week coming out too, so pay attention to that. Let's move on quickly. Just a few more short stories. Edge, you can now hide the taskbar if you're using vertical tabs. This is
taskbar or title bar?
Title bar. Sorry.
just clarify.
Yes, I always mix those two up. Yeah, the title bar. Sorry, the thing on top. So if you're using Edge and you have the vertical tabs, which is awesome, it's what I use because you can see way more of your tabs.
It's lame.
You don't use vertical tabs?
No, I don't. I do not.
Good Lord. It's because you're not like me. I have currently 51 tabs open.
I have 3 tabs, one of which I don't need, so I just closed it.
If you don't do the research, you don't do your own research. So some of these features are under Edge flags. And if you don't know, just type in your address bar Edge : 2 flags. And you're going to have all sorts of weird options there that you can enable, because some of these are enabled in Canary, but not in Dev, not in Beta, vice versa. So what they're doing here is, one, they have the vertical tabs, which is cool. If you use a lot of tabs, it's much better use of your space, mostly because you can just see more of the tabs, but you can also now adjust it so you can see the full title or less title or something like that, which is really kind of cool. You combine that with tab groups, which is a hidden flag feature. Just search for groups under flags and you'll see it. You can now group open tabs under like a little banner, and you can name that banner and color code it. And then you can like minimize that group too. So if you're doing research and you have like 10 tabs, you can just put it under this one group, minimize it, kind of save it for later. So that's another feature that's coming out. And now this new thing is hide the title bar. So if you're using vertical tabs, you still have like the name on the tab it's currently open at the top of the screen, but it's kind of a waste of space. So you can now hide that, and you're going to get even more vertical space now. So like this is just, for me, like a killer option when we put all 3 of these things together. This will all be coming eventually to Edge production, of course, but you can enable a lot of these features now. But I'm telling you, vertical tabs, Edge groups, adjustable bar, and hide title bar, man, Edge is becoming this workhorse. So
I've started using, because Edge has like a password manager now, and it also generates passwords. Yes. I've started using that, and it's really nice. I would love to see a dedicated password manager client that taps into this. I know Android technically has it with Authenticator, but Windows doesn't have an Authenticator app. But I would love to see something built into Windows so I can use it in more than just Edge. But it's a good start.
Slowly. I still use NPass as my main system, but every once in a while now Edge is like, "Do you want me to remember that password?" I'm like, "Yeah, you know what? You get it. You get it.
You get this one, Edge. Thanks."
Yeah, and so then it's on my phone, right? Then because now it works on iOS and Android too. But what's cool is it actually acts as a password manager on those devices.
It does,
that is, if you go to a website or an app and you try to log in, Authenticator goes, "Hey, I got that password for you," and allows it to work. So it's kind of cool.
I found a website, eBay. I don't know how long they've been doing this, but eBay now supports Windows Hello.
Hello, yes.
It's great. It's so good. Yep. I wish more sites did that. Even the Microsoft's own store doesn't do that. Like the actual store website doesn't use Windows Hello, which is crazy.
Someone goes, "Who arranges tabs? Just leave them open and get to them when you get to them." Yeah, I have 140 tabs sometimes open because I do work, because I'm smart and do research. So when I have 140 tabs open, I will organize.
This is the weirdest gatekeeping ever.
But it's also because I'm working on stories. I'm working on one on ARM right now. So
I wouldn't even know if I had 140 tabs. I wouldn't know where anything was. It would be less productive for me to have 140 tabs.
That's what I'm saying. That's where you have tab groups.
That's true.
And they can be auto created. So say you start searching, like say, you're start looking at, I don't know, sunglasses. You do a search for sunglasses, and you're like, "Oh, that one looks cool," and you open up in a new tab. Like it can actually start creating that group automatically, and then because if you're shopping for something, you may open like 10 tabs, and then you'll go through each one and be like, "Yeah, no, I don't like that." Click, and this will then create a group for you. Then you can name that group and minimize and save the group if you wanted to. So for all the people complaining about all the what was the feature that they canceled years ago with Windows?
I don't know.
We're gonna have like the tab windows. Sets. Yeah, this is sets. Like
except it's only web apps, because you can't put Win32 apps in there or programs.
Right, but what they found out is a lot of people, like I said, 50 to 60% of Windows usage is the web. It's in the browser, so it kind of makes sense there. Now collections, I use collections. So collections are, you can actually take, I think there's a feature where they're going to allow you to take a group and make it create a collection, basically for saving for later. I use collections too. That's my long-term vault of stuff.
For when you need tabs in the future.
Yeah, basically. So I think all this stuff is great. This is how people use the web.
It's true.
Sorry.
The browser is the OS now.
Yeah. All right. Finally, let's turn to Jez's article. Xbox is ready to start playing dirty. So this is a very long editorial he did, but the TLDR is, companies like Sony, Nintendo, a lot of other ones on PC too, do this exclusive stuff where they lock in a title, sometimes temporarily for a few months, sometimes permanently. Mm-hmm. And people have been like, depending on which side they're on, like, that's a great idea, that's awesome, usually because they're going to benefit from it. And of course, other people hate it. And historically speaking, Microsoft has sort of steered away from doing that. They haven't really had too many console exclusives recently, or at least ones that have been massive hits, I should say. And they've kind of didn't really like this idea, but basically Jez is sort of arguing that, they're going to probably start doing this. Now they bought up every major studio.
I think a good chunk. I think they should. If Sony can do it, if Nintendo can do it, I don't see why Microsoft can't do it. It's not great for the industry, don't get me wrong, but Microsoft has it out here in the sense that all of their exclusives are PC compatible as well. There's no longer an Xbox console exclusive, unless there's a third-party developer that just wants to ship on Xbox. But Microsoft's Game Studio games will be Xbox and PC. That's just how it is now. There won't be a console exclusive anymore for Xbox. And a lot of Sony fans or gaming fans in general see that as a loss for Xbox. But it's really not, because the Xbox ecosystem exists across PC and Xbox now. And even if you can get the games on Steam, if you're using Windows, you're using a Microsoft product. And therefore, Microsoft gets your money. It doesn't matter if they're using it on the piece of plastic that's called Xbox, or if they're using it on a PC. It doesn't matter. It's still an exclusive to the Xbox ecosystem. And therefore, it's a win for Microsoft. And they're definitely going to do this, for sure. I also think they should play a little bit dirty with timed exclusives, for games that aren't Game Studio games. Like Tomb Raider, for example, which is what Jez used as an example. Rise of the Tomb Raider was a timed Xbox console exclusive, and the industry just went nuts, calling Microsoft the devil basically for doing this. But this happens all the time on the Sony side, and nobody seems to care when Sony does it. I think Microsoft hasn't done this since, to be fair, though the backlash I think sort of burned them a bit. But I would love it if they came out and sort of just tried to grab up titles as timed exclusives. If, say, I can't think of a new game coming. Say if they'd make a Hitman 4. Would love it if Hitman 4 was timed exclusive to Xbox. It doesn't have to be forever. I don't think keeping things exclusive to Xbox forever is a great thing. But making them timed so that people who don't have an Xbox feel like they should have an Xbox is a good thing, because that's about driving sales. I think they should do that. But we'll have to see, because Microsoft right now are obviously they've mended a lot of bridges with their gaming community and the gaming area in general. They're looked on quite positively now. Wasn't the case back when the Xbox One first launched. They're probably being careful, and they probably don't want to, make a wrong turn or do something that could damage that reputation that they've worked so hard to rebuild. So we'll have to see what they do.
Yeah, I mean, Microsoft has had this reputation of being the good guys, like, hey, come on, we're going to play fair and all this. And it's just like, I don't know if the good guy reputation necessarily works for all this kind of stuff. I kind of don't care if they
do. The gaming industry it's just a nightmare, because no one's nice to anyone. It's cutthroat. And Microsoft being the good guy probably doesn't actually help them in a lot of times. Yeah,
and the Epic trial hasn't really helped all that too much, because the way all the companies kind of treat each other. Yeah, we'll see what happens. Xbox definitely does seem to be on a roll recently, and so Game Pass and all this stuff is doing quite well for them. So we'll see. They just really need to get some. They need a killer title. It's really what they need. I still don't think sorry, I don't think the new Halo is going to be it. I just don't. Well, to be proven wrong on that, but I just, I feel like Halo and Gears of War and even Forza a little bit. I realize they have their fan base and that's great, but I'm talking about expanding to new people. It's really hard to be like, if you're new, I'm thinking I might get an Xbox for the first time. Cool, Gear 6. It's like, wait, do I need to know the other Gears of War? Wait, why are they just called Gears now? Like, what they need is that new IP that really kind of gets people in. And Sony's been able to do that quite effectively. On the other hand, if you're not always into the AAA big game of the week kind of thing, Xbox has been very good with Game Pass. And, my big thing on Xbox, I've always enjoyed the indie stuff more than kind of the big title games. I think the big title games, I'm a huge fan of Doom, for instance, but I find the indie stuff a little bit more accessible if you don't have a ton of time to play. So we'll see what happens. Oh, we forgot to mention some ARM news too. We forgot to mention that. Well, did we talk about that last week? That for those of you paying attention, Photoshop is now officially native on Windows on ARM. And so that's a big deal. That's been in beta for a while, but now if you're part of Creative Cloud, which I am not, you can now run Photoshop natively on there. I don't know how it runs, to be honest. I don't run Photoshop. I run Elements, which means I'll probably have to wait another 5 years before that gets native support. But I like Elements because you can just buy it. And I don't need to have a subscription. And it does what I need to do for all the photos I edit. But we should also mention World of Warcraft, which is weird, is apparently can run natively on ARM now too, which is kind of a big deal. So we'll be covering that a little bit more next week. But this is what people have been kind of talking about, which is it's actually good that Apple is making waves with the M1 because it gets people talking about ARM. And yeah, ARM on Windows is a thing already. And so there's a very good chance we're going to see residual effects of, for compiling on ARM. And I think there'll be an announcement next week too on some of this from another company. So there is momentum here. And I'm going to do an article talking about a little bit of ARM too, because, Qualcomm is everybody's focus, but I think that field is going to heat up a lot in the next 12 to 24 months on the Windows PC side as this stuff kind of continues to grow. So I'll kind of catch everybody up on that hopefully for next week. So that said, hour and 20 minutes in, I think we can wrap it up unless there was any other stories we didn't cover this week. Zach?
I don't think so. I think that's
reading
everything.
The internet.
Obviously, Build is next week, so we'll be covering all the Build stuff on next week's episode. But yeah, that's basically everything, I think, for this week.
We didn't talk about the discontinuation of Internet Explorer. Yes, I would say it in one sentence.
Do we really have
Internet Explorer is being pulled from Windows. That's the end of the story. I'm not sure why anyone would care. I get it. It has a role for some people, but yeah.
Yeah, and it's fair to say, real quick on that subject, that although they're putting the application, but the engine will still be part of Windows because it powers IE mode in the new Edge, which is what they're telling you to use if you still need to use IE-enabled websites. But yeah, that's the story, basically.
Thing of the week. Do you have one?
No.
This is, I think, the part of the podcast kind of last week where we started screen melting.
Yes, try it. So let's hurry up.
So real quickly, I was talking about the Neuro Apollo, which I've been now using for almost 2 weeks. It's this thing you wear on your ankle or your wrist. I wear it on my ankle, and it uses sound waves and all this. It's kind of aligning your... I don't want just go look it up. It's Neuro Apollo or Apollo Neuro. I forgot which one it is. I actually bought this thing. It's expensive. I will say, though, it's working. Like, the thing I've been measuring is my heart rate variability, the HRV, and I use that with my Aura Ring. And ever since I've been using this at nighttime, especially when I go to sleep, my heart rate recovers during the night. What it's supposed to do is your heart rate is supposed to slow down during sleep, and then at some point start like going back up again. And this variability is what they're finding out is tied to basically how well you recover physically and mentally from the previous day. So if you worked out really hard. So if your heart rate slowly declines, but then you wake up and it's time to get up and it doesn't really get a chance to kind of go back up again, this variability sort of affects that. And all things could affect it: food, caffeine, alcohol, and all that kind of stuff. But I've had almost a week and a half now. My HRV's been optimal or recovered, as the thing says. So it's working there. I've also written much more than I have. I've had a lot more mental energy. Is this placebo? It's always hard to tell in these things, obviously. I will say, though, I feel like it is working, so I don't know. I'm going to continue using it, though, because I've been sleeping better with it. I feel better. I have more energy, and neurologically, I feel better. If you want to understand the science behind it, it's kind of cool. You can go read up on their website. It's made by a PhD, MD guy who basically is a professor, and he just did this as a side project. And they did their own kind of research on it, so you can go read the science behind it. I don't think it's a gimmick. I think it's actually kind of working, but this is just a case study, right? I don't have, and I have some data behind it, but obviously I'm one person, so who knows? But it's like $350, so you can get it for like $310, I think. It's not cheap. It's pretty darn expensive. But yeah, so that's my thing of the week. So go check it out. I'm all into the biohacking stuff. We're just fleshy robots, and if you understand how the mechanics and biology works of your brain and your eyes and everything else, you can sort of improve yourself. Something as you get older, Zach, you'll figure out.
Sure.
But you'll figure out how not to strain your back.
Yeah.
Do you have a thing of the week?
I don't have a thing of the week. I've tried to think of one. Didn't watch anything this week. I just worked. Actually, thing of the week. We have a new show on the YouTube channel.
Oh yeah.
Called Ask Windows Central. It's essentially Ask Dan, but sort of revitalized. We're bringing more people in, including myself, and Jez or whoever else on the Windows Central team. Whenever there's a question that their area of expertise can answer, we're not too sure how often we're going to do these yet. I think we're going to try and do them twice a month. The first episode's already live, but if you have questions, just go send them. Enter them in the comment section on the latest episode, or you can tweet us, or you can email daniel@windowscentral.com. But yeah, that's we got a new Q&A show. Basically a condensed version of the Q&A section we do on this podcast.
Exactly. It's a lot of fun. Came out well. We just got to polish it up a little bit, make it a little bit shorter, but it should be good. So check that out on the YouTube channel, and we will be trying to turn that into a mini podcast too, for those of you who want to listen to it on the go. Bite-sized Windows Central. Maybe that should be the name. Anywho, that does it for us. Let's wrap it up. You can watch us every Friday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern time on YouTube Windows Central. You can also follow me on Twitter, Daniel_Rubino, or Zach at Zach Bowden. And of course, we're going to do Q&A now with the audience, so we'll do that for a little bit. But if you're listening to this recorded, you can't hear that part, so you'll need to tune in live. But as always, don't forget to get your vaccine shot. I just got my second one. Hopefully I'll survive the weekend, and hopefully you all stay safe out there. Other than that, we'll catch you next time. Take care, everyone.
So yeah, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask them now. We will do our best to answer them.
900 questions on Sun Valley. What is Sun Valley?
It's a sunny valley. What else does it sound like? Crypto market's still falling, in case you wanted to know.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Not great. Not been a great week.
They've had like little rallies. And just falls. Yeah, Zach, fix the podcast.
Fix it.
Why is it so hard to find the Windows Central podcast before the podcast?
Before? I don't know what you mean. I'm sorry.
You see it, Kevin Rush. See the comment.
Kevin Rush.
You have to read.
Is it hard to find the Windows Central podcast before the podcast on the day of the podcast? It doesn't show up correctly on their YouTube page. I'm not sure why that would be. I usually see it on the YouTube page. Or if you follow us on Twitter or look at the homepage, the podcast is at the very top, usually an hour or two before we go live. No Duo news, no updates, nothing to report. Frustration is building up since the April update. Yeah, the April update was significantly, but was quite buggy, I think. The May update is supposed to be coming next week, I believe. So not long left to go. Have you loaded Android 12 on the Duo? I have not. It's not available for the Duo. We don't even have Android 11 yet, unfortunately. Is the secrecy around Windows and locking features down the new normal, or is it a one-off because of Sun Valley? I assume it's the new normal. Panos is in charge after Sun Valley. I assume he will want to keep the secrecy as prominent as possible. Zach and Dan, Brad said that the Duo 2 is already ready for release. Do you know if they will release it in the summer when they update the Duo for Android 11? I don't think so. The Duo 2's hardware is... I don't think it's final, but it's they know what it's going to look like and they know the feature set at this point. I think they're still sort of messing around with materials. But they know like the shape and size and the specs list and stuff. That's all it's set in stone. The OS is a little bit further behind. I don't think they're going to be ready until September, October time.
And it would be kind of weird to announce now, I think.
Yeah. No, I think it will launch in October alongside other services. The co-release branch builds, what's with them? They're definitely not tied to 21H2, but they aren't RS pre-release either. I assume you're referring to co-refresh. I believe, and I'm not 100% sure about this, because of how Sun Valley is developed. So a lot of Sun Valley is something called undocked, which means it can be added or updated outside of the operating system being updated. So, for example, the new start menu and the new task view UI and the new search UI, all the sort of new sort of taskbar related stuff is undocked and therefore can be delivered via a feature experience pack, which we believe is codenamed Cherry Hill. And internally right now, a lot of self-hosters are testing that experience pack. And what happens is you'll have the standard insider build, essentially, which looks like normal Windows 10. Then you install this experience pack, and it enables the new Sun Valley UX stuff. But not everything can be undocked. There's some stuff that is still docked. And to sort of hide that from... Because they can hide the undocked stuff easy. They just don't push it as an update, and you don't get the new stuff. But the docked stuff is actually in the OS. So I think what they've done is they've got co-release, which is the public insider builds, and then they've got co-refresh, which is the docked Sun Valley stuff, the stuff that can't be updated independently from the OS. And the reason they're separate is so that they can hide it all from insiders. So things like, say, the new settings app or context menus and stuff like that, like things that aren't being updated via the feature experience packs, those can be updated and worked on internally without the public seeing it. I believe that's what co-refresh is for. But don't quote me on that. But I assume, I guess your follow-up question would be, will insiders see co-refresh? And I don't think so. I think what might end up happening is it'll just get, I guess, back-ported, I don't know, back to co-release. But I guess we'll see what they do. I'm not 100% sure about that.
Why does Microsoft not expand to markets like India, where Apple has been so successful? I mean, you can't get Windows in India?
Is the H2 update being an enablement package now a standard? No. This year's H2 update will not be an enablement package. It'll be a full-blown OS release. Do you think we'll see full Windows 10 move towards state separation and a further build out of Windows Core OS under the hood now that 10X is gone? I'm not sure. I'm not a developer. I don't know what the technical capabilities are of legacy desktop. I know that Windows Core was conceptualized because they couldn't do the things that they wanted to do with Windows Core on desktop without breaking compatibility with legacy apps and stuff. But maybe they figured it out and they're going to slowly but surely bring that stuff to desktop. State separation, I think, is technically possible. But again, in the documentation I've read for Core OS, they mention state separation being, and they explain why they can't do it on on desktop. It's because it breaks app compat and stuff. So who knows? Maybe they figured it out. I don't know.
Will Surface Duo come with Android 12 or 11? My guess is 11.
I think 11 too, yes. Is the new start menu going to group apps alphabetically still, or will they be randomly put on a grid like on 10X? So if you look at the 10X start menu, take the search bar away, that's the Sun Valley start menu. So you do have the pinned grids along the top, but there's a separate apps list UI now, so it's not just expanding the grid. You click on the apps view, and I believe that takes you to a dedicated apps list, which is alphabetical, I believe. But yeah, the sort of gridded icons is now, I think they call it pinned now, and you can pin apps to that and move them around and stuff. Will Duo 2 have a rear-facing camera? We think so. They've definitely had prototypes, older prototypes with Andromeda, where they had an external camera system. And we do believe that the Duo 2 will have an external camera system of some kind. Are the 4 Microsoft Experience stores still not selling products? I don't think so. When do you think we'll start seeing Sun Valley Insider builds? I think we'll start seeing them in June. Probably mid to late June.
Zach, you have your own place in London, or is it a rent?
I do not have the money to buy a place in London. Are you having a laugh? I don't live in London anymore either. I've moved. So... Do you expect the Surface Duo to be updated to Android 11 before the release of Duo 2? I believe, yes. I believe we're expecting that this summer. Probably sometime in August, maybe.
How is Surface Buds holding up? Any degradation in sound quality? Well, I did drop the dark ones. Not too far onto the onto plastic, and one of them stopped working. So there's that. The white ones are holding up fine. I would say they got better. They improved some of the sound codecs and stuff like that with updates. But other than that, they're still good.
How do you think they should treat legacy apps with Sun Valley? Do you think it's possible for them to correctly do it? I'm not sure what you're asking. If you're asking, will Sun Valley update the UI of legacy apps? The answer is no. As long as if the developer doesn't adopt WinUI, there will be no change to what the legacy app looks like. The only thing you'll really notice is the rounded corners on the app window. But yeah, the UIs won't change unless developers update to support WinUI. Do you expect this new cadence for major releases for Windows to continue, maybe even yearly? We don't know. Possibly. It depends if Microsoft has more stuff in the pipeline for desktop, which I assume they do, but to what extent, I don't know. If they're able to, because like I said, I've seen a lot of Sun Valley documentation and concepts and plans. I don't think they're going to deliver all of it with this initial release. So anything that does get cut could very easily show up in next year's version of Windows if Microsoft wanted to. But again, we'll have to wait and see what they ship. Because although we're seeing bits and pieces here and there, we still don't really know what the full product looks like. Because Microsoft has done a very good job of splitting everything up into hundreds of different branches, so you only get to see a bit of it here and a bit of it there. You don't get to see it all together, at least not that I've seen it properly anyway. Will the Surface Duo 2 have smaller bezels? We believe it will have slightly thinner bezels on all sides, yes. Ever so slight.
Thicker bezels. Going thicker.
All right, a couple more questions, and it's probably time to head off.
Yep. What do we expect from Surface Go 3? Slimmer design and thinner bezels? Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably doable. I'm more interested in the processor. I don't think they'll switch away from Intel for it, but I don't know what they're going to use for Intel at that point too. So they really need a better chip in that device, though, to make it really kind of useful. Is Duo 2 likely to have NFC? Yes.
I think we've said that 100 times now. Duo 2 will have NFC.
5G. Basically, whatever you think makes a modern smartphone. Does it have a new chipset? Yes. Does it have 5G? Yes. Does it have NFC? Yes. More cameras, better cameras? Yes. I think all that stuff is definitely very plausible. Will Duo have 2 inward curved screens? I thought we spent a lot of time talking about that on this podcast. For probably good
Put it
reason.
this way, they've prototyped it. They have patents for it. It would. I'm sure they're exploring it.
Can we talk about Edge widgets? I mean, I tweeted about that. I'm using it right now. It's in Canary. It's kind of cool. Got a little floating. Yeah, Zach, I'll send you the screenshot here. Like when it's minimized, it has a little floating. It's just like on the smartphones, where it has a little floating icon on your screen.
Oh, it's like those little message bubbles on Android.
Yeah. If you don't know, an Edge Canary, I don't know if it's on flags or where, but you can enable the Edge widget. And it's just that. It's a little floating Edge icon on the side of your screen. And when you click it, it brings up basically what's news and interests. And then you can even pin that to the side of your screen. It's very like old school Windows stuff, but it's kind of neat. I like it.
Is pure UWP dead? It seems Win32 with Reunion is now the recommended path. WinUI 3 for UWP isn't even mentioned in the roadmap. I don't think UWP is dead. It's certainly no longer their North Star for the Windows app platform. It's something developers will still be able to build with if they really want to. It's not going to be removed from Visual Studio, for example. Windows will always support it. But I would wager that Reunion is the future for the app platform. So any new APIs and whatnot will be added to Reunion and not to UWP. That said, I'm not a developer, so I don't actually really understand Reunion and how it's different from the things that already exist. So don't take my word for that. But I'm pretty sure that if you were to ask Microsoft, what platform should I use to build an app, Win32, UWP, or Reunion, I'm sure they would tell you Reunion. Because I believe you can build a Reunion app that's more UWP than Win32. I think right now the reason Win32 is sort of in the headlines for the Reunion stuff is because most of it's new to Win32, whereas UWP's had most of this for a while. So there's not as big a news for it there. Do you think the Duo has to be thicker to accommodate all the components you expect to see in version 2? I do. I think it'll be ever so slightly thicker. But they can fix that by changing the dimensions in all ways. So if they make it a slightly bit taller, that gives them more room height-wise for a bigger battery, for example. So we'll have to see what they do exactly. But I do think I would be shocked if the Duo 2 is not any thicker than the Duo 1. The Duo 1 is incredibly thin, to its own demise, really, in the sense that there's a terrible camera, and even like the glass on it's like bulging on it because it's so thin.
Will Duo 2 be IP certified? I think now you're wishing for too much. Come on. No, I do not. Just like iPads aren't IP certified.
Reunion is more of a combo of a lot of things right now. WinUI, app lifecycle, Win32 metadata. Yeah, it's you just said a whole bunch of things to me that I don't understand. But yeah, like I said, I'm not a developer, so do not ask me about Reunion or the future of any app platform on Windows, because I don't know the answer. I do know that UWP isn't going to be deleted. Like, you will always be able to build UWP apps if you want to as a developer. But I think at some point it won't make sense to do that, if it has ever made sense.
All right. So,
Dan's calling it. Time to go.
wait, hold on. Think Duo 2 will have more recent chipset rather than one. Now, yeah, I heard they're going to use Snapdragon 845 on this one.
We're going backwards this year.
Yes. No, we said that. Listen.
Flagship.
You name it. Does it have a newer chipset? Like a new one. New one. Like one that's like for a new phone for 2021.
Okay,
yes.
Here's what I will say.
Yes.
The reason why the Duo 1 didn't ship with the 865 is because the 865 acquired the 5G chip, the 5G modem, and that was separate. It wasn't built into the system on a chip. Therefore, it took up more room. Therefore, it didn't fit in the Duo 1, so they had to stick with the 855 with LTE because it had the LTE stuff built into the system on a chip. The latest Snapdragon processor, the 888, has the 5G chip built into the system on a chip, so no longer does it need that separate modem. Therefore, it can fit in the Duo form factor. So, if we put our magical thinking hats on, it's likely that the Duo 2 has a Snapdragon 888 in it. And with that, we will end the show.
All right, guys. We'll see you next time.
Thank you, everybody. Follow us on Twitter. We'll keep you updated when we go live and all that good stuff. But until then, we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.